When my daughter Rhonda placed that yellowed hospital document on my kitchen table, I didn't know my entire past was about to shift beneath me. It was a quiet Thursday morning in April, the kind of morning where sunlight comes through lace curtains and makes everything feel soft. I'd been folding dish towels when Rhonda walked in, her face a mixture of hesitation and something else I couldn't name yet. She didn't say much at first, just set her purse down, pulled out a manila folder, and slid one thin piece of paper across the table. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The paper was old, the edges were browned, the ink faded in places, but the hospital letterhead was still clear. St. Catherine's Medical Center, March 1984. That was the year I gave birth to twin girls. I felt my hands go still on the dish towel. Rhonda sat down across from me and folded her hands, waiting. Her eyes were gentle, but they held something heavy. I picked up the paper. It was a birth record. Twin A, Twin B. Both names were listed. Rhonda Marie. And beneath it, another name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in 40 years. Emma Rose, the name I'd whispered into the dark for months after they told me she didn't make it. I looked up at Rhonda. My voice came out quieter than I expected. She told me the hospital had made a mistake. Not in the way I thought. Not in the way anyone thought. I wasn't prepared for the name I was about to hear again. Rhonda said she'd been doing some genealogy research, one of those online DNA kits. She'd submitted her sample months ago, just curious about distant relatives, health markers, the usual things people look for. But the results came back with something unexpected. A close match. Not a cousin, not a second cousin, a sibling. I stared at her. My throat felt tight. Rhonda said she'd reached out, carefully, through the website's messaging system. The woman on the other end had been cautious at first, then confused, then quiet for a long time. Her name was Emma. She was 70 years old. She lived 3 states away. She'd been adopted as an infant, and she'd always been told she was born alone. I set the paper down. I felt my fingers trembling against the edge of the table. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, trying to understand how a baby I'd been told was gone had been breathing all this time. Rhonda reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. She said Emma wanted to know what happened, and so did she. What Rhonda showed me next made my breath catch in a way I couldn't explain. It was a photocopy of an old adoption record. Rhonda had requested it through a legal process, something about updated state laws allowing access to sealed files. The document listed the birth mother's name, mine. It listed the hospital, St. Catherine's, and it listed the reason for the adoption. Mother believed infant deceased, infant placed for emergency medical care and subsequent adoption by attending physician. I read the words 3 times before they started to make sense. Rhonda said the attending physician's name was listed too, Dr. Harold Brennan. I remembered him. Tall man, calm voice. He'd been the one who told me Emma didn't survive the delivery. He'd been the one who said sometimes these things happen with twins, that her heart had been too weak, that there was nothing anyone could have done. He'd held my hand when he said it. I asked Rhonda how this could have happened, how someone could take a living baby and tell a mother she was gone. Rhonda's face softened, but her voice stayed steady. She said she didn't know all the details yet, but she'd found something else. She pulled out a newspaper clipping. It was old, printed on that thin, grainy paper that turns yellow fast. The headline read, "Local physician questioned in adoption irregularities." The date was 1992, 8 years after I gave birth. Dr. Brennan had been placing babies with families for years, quietly, without the mothers ever knowing. He'd been taking babies from mothers who had no one to speak for them. The article said he'd told some mothers their babies were sick, others that they were stillborn. Some of the mothers had been poor, some had been young, some had been alone. I'd been all 3. I looked at Rhonda. Words felt too far away to reach. I felt something crack open inside me, something that had been sealed tight for 40 years. She asked me if I wanted to meet Emma. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, holding that clipping, feeling the weight of all the years I'd spent carrying a grief that had been built on a lie. The address written on that paper felt like it was pulling me somewhere I'd been afraid to go. Rhonda had already been in contact with Emma. They'd exchanged messages, then phone calls, then video calls. She said Emma was kind, soft-spoken. She worked as a librarian. She'd been raised by a couple who loved her, who'd passed away years ago. Emma had always felt like something was missing, but she'd never known what. Rhonda showed me a photo on her phone, a woman with silver hair and my mother's eyes. She was smiling, but there was a sadness in the smile, the kind that comes from a lifetime of questions you didn't know how to ask. I stared at that photo for a long time. Rhonda said Emma lived in a small town in Pennsylvania. She'd offered to come here, or we could go there, or we could meet somewhere in between. Whatever felt right. I asked Rhonda what she thought I should do. She said she thought I should do whatever my heart needed, but she also said something else. She said Emma had spent 40 years wondering why she felt incomplete, and I'd spent 40 years mourning someone who was alive. Maybe we both deserved to know each other now. I folded the paper and slid it back into the folder. Then I looked at my daughter and told her I wanted to go. We made the drive 2 weeks later. Rhonda came with me. We stayed quiet for most of the trip, just the hum of the car and the soft sound of the radio. I watched the landscape change outside the window and tried to imagine what I'd say when I saw her. Emma had suggested we meet at a small park near her house, somewhere neutral, somewhere we could talk without feeling trapped. When we pulled into the parking lot, I saw her standing by a bench. She was wearing a light blue sweater. Her hands were folded in front of her, the way mine always were when I was nervous. Rhonda touched my arm gently and said she'd wait in the car unless I needed her. I got out slowly. My legs felt unsteady. Emma saw me and took a few steps forward. Then she stopped. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. I didn't know if I should hug her or speak first or cry or laugh or any of the 100 things I'd imagined on the drive. But then she smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. And I knew. Only when I held that photograph did I realize the story wasn't finished. We sat on the bench and talked for hours. At first, it was surface things, where we'd lived, what we did, small details about our lives. But then the conversation softened and deepened. Emma told me she'd always felt like a piece of her was somewhere else. She said she used to dream about a face she couldn't quite see, a voice she couldn't quite hear. She thought it was just her mind playing tricks. I told her I used to whisper her name in the dark, that I'd kept a small box of things I'd bought for her before she was born, a blanket, a stuffed lamb, a tiny silver bracelet. I'd never been able to let them go. Emma's eyes filled with tears when I said that. She reached into her purse and pulled out something small. It was a hospital bracelet. Tiny, faded. It had her birth name on it, Emma Rose. She said her adoptive parents had given it to her when she was old enough to ask questions. They'd told her it was the only thing that came with her from the hospital. I looked at that bracelet and felt something inside me finally, quietly settle. I asked her if she was angry. At me. At what happened. She shook her head. She said she wasn't angry. She said she was sad for the years we'd lost. But she wasn't angry. She said her life had been good. Her parents had loved her. She'd been safe. But she said she was glad to finally know where she came from, and she was glad to know I'd never stopped loving her. We sat there as the sun started to set. Rhonda joined us after a while, and the three of us just talked. Quiet, gentle, no rush. Before we left, Emma asked if she could hug me. I said yes. When she stepped close, I smelled something faint and familiar. Lavender. The same soap my mother used to use. I held her tighter than I meant to. Later that night, back in the hotel room, Rhonda asked me how I felt. I didn't know how to answer at first. There was grief. For the years stolen. For the man who'd lied. For the life we could have had. But there was also something else. Relief, gratitude, a quiet kind of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. I told Rhonda I felt like I'd been carrying a stone in my chest for 40 years, and now, for the first time, I could breathe all the way through. We stayed in touch after that. Emma and I called each other once a week. Sometimes we'd talk for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. It didn't matter, just hearing her voice was enough. Rhonda helped us put together a timeline. We found more documents, more records. We even filed a formal complaint against the estate of Dr. Brennan, though he'd died years ago. It didn't change what happened, but it felt like something. A few months later, Emma came to visit. She stayed with us for a week. We cooked together. We looked through old photo albums. I showed her the box I'd kept. When she saw the blanket, she cried. She said it was the softest thing she'd ever touched. I told her it was hers. It always had been. On her last day, we sat in the backyard with tea. The evening was warm, and the air smelled like jasmine. Emma said something I'll never forget. She said she used to think a part of her was missing, but now she realized it was never missing. It was just waiting. I looked at her and felt my heart do something it hadn't done in a long time. It felt whole. I don't know what the next years will bring. Emma and I are building something new. It's not the relationship we lost. It's something quieter, softer, but it's ours. Rhonda says she's glad she did that DNA test. She says it gave us all something we didn't know we needed. I think she's right. Sometimes the truth takes 40 years to surface, and sometimes, when it finally does, it doesn't break you. It puts you back together. I still think about Dr. Brennan sometimes, about what he did, about the mothers and babies he separated. I feel anger when I think about it, but I don't let it consume me, because Emma is here now, and that's what matters. She sent me a photo last week. It was her sitting in her garden, holding a book. She looked peaceful. I put it on my fridge, right next to the one of Rhonda. 2 daughters, both here, both mine. I never thought I'd get to say that, but here we are. What part of this story touched you the most?